always enjoy being on your show, you know. I think it's a wonderful show. You always learn one thing or two, if not plenty.
Is that so?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's always a pleasure to be on your show as ENP, as myself, not the crazy loud person every morning,
Mm-hmm.
Mondays to Thursday. Um, okay, so Dr. Unitedal, I would try to not to use the titles as you like us not
Mm-hmm.
to.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
today we are talking wills and power of attorney.
That's correct.
What is a will?
Okay. What is a will?
Yes.
The best way to describe a will is your last information, your last instructions about what you want your property, um, what you want your
Yeah.
to be used for.
Okay.
How to who should get your property in short.
Okay.
Okay. Basically, it's often in the form of a written note. It has to be written in terms of the law.
All right.
Basically, you're saying this is how I want my property to be distributed. That's what it will is.
Uh, do you buy a specific document or you can just get a piece of paper, write? I don't know. How does a standard will look like? Because I've
Okay.
never written one.
Okay. Well, I hope that after this you
I
will be
will.
motivated to
I
do something
will.
about that.
Yeah.
So we'll discuss why in a little while. But
Okay.
basically, yes, you can get from the internet
Mm.
standard wills. You can go to a lawyer, to help you write your will. But what you need to understand is that also you can write one at home, but you have to be very careful because there are certain features that makes a will valid.
Yes.
Okay, it has to be very clear. Who you say and how you say your property should be distributed.
Mm.
It has to have at least two witnesses to it.
Okay.
Okay, so that's why it's best to get
Yeah.
help.
All right. So I'm just sitting here thinking, where does one learn how to write a will? I mean, we don't learn this in school. So,
Most people actually know. It's just that they may not call it a will. They will say, "I want my property. I want this house to go to so and so. I want this house to go to so and so." Okay,
uh-huh.
and I want my farm to go to so and so. So that's a will.
Yes.
But for it to be valid, for it to be used later, to actually effect your instructions, it
Yes.
has to be reduced in writing.
Okay.
So I would really say, I know you may think, oh, it's expensive to go to your lawyer. If you have education, tertiary education, you can look it up on the net and use, and use a standard will.
Okay.
But also, if you have access to your lawyer, it shouldn't be that expensive. It shouldn't cost you more than 2,500 to actually write a will.
Yes.
So, but it's worth doing it, I would say.
Who keeps the will?
Um, it's up to you.
Okay.
Ideally, you can file one with the master of the high court.
All right.
Okay, but give a copy to a trusted person. Put a copy in a safe or a place that is usually private. A place where those who are behind, you leave behind, will able to find easily.
Yes.
Of course, if you use the lawyer, there'll be a copy with the lawyer.
Yes.
You know, um, but it's the best thing is that safekeeping of a will is always tricky because people think if that one person I did not leave anything to finds out,
Yes.
they're going to rip it to bits or whatever. So, but just it's yeah. I think the other thing that I need to mention,
Mm.
even as we start, is it's important that when somebody passes away, you register their death with the master
Mm.
of the High Court. Every death should be registered because only then can you find out is there a will or no will.
Oh, yes.
You understand? Um, some people say, "Oh, they didn't own much, so I'm not going to register the estate."
Mm.
No, most people have something. Even if just that one team,
Yes.
that one house, that one table. It really brings certainty.
Yes.
If people who you leave behind know what you say should be done with your property.
Mm.
Yes.
Can people forge wills? Because you're not there to defend yourself anymore. You're dead. So can somebody find it and forge it?
Well, you need three people to do it, or at
Okay.
least or that person should forge two other signatures
Oh, yes. There's
because
that. Yeah.
a will has to be signed or witnessed by two people
Yes.
who must be older than 14 years old
Mm.
and who must state that they saw you sign the will.
Yes.
So for you to forge it, you're going to have to involve two other people who are willing to lie with you.
Yeah. Okay. So in this case, two things I've learned so far. Always leave the will where it can be accessed by people who are still
Hmm.
alive.
Hmm.
Otherwise, there's no point, is it? If you put
Yes.
it in a safe and then nobody has got the access to the safe,
Hmm.
you can leave it to a lawyer. In this case, are we saying a lawyer is an individual, or it can also be a lawyer firm in the sense like a law firm, basically?
That's correct. A
Yes.
law firm,
Yes.
it would be, and also in a will, often you say who is going to be in charge of distributing your account.
Okay.
So that person needs to be notified as soon as possible
Yes.
that you have the power to oversee this estate, and therefore it's important that it will be access. And also, I mean, once you are passed away, even if you hid things, people go through your things,
Yes.
isn't it? I mean, they find your umang, they find your driver's license, so
Yeah.
because they're dealing with your aftermath,
Yes.
so to speak. So that's where they will find your will.
Say, uh, an interesting, funny question just hit my mind now.
Uh-huh.
You had a lawyer who is keeping your will, and then they die,
Hmm.
because lawyers are people. They also die, don't they? What happens then? You know?
Okay. The will doesn't die with them.
Okay.
If you actually signed a will before the lawyer, there will be a copy at the
Yes.
masters.
Masters. Yes.
Mhm. And also, you can always search if you think your dear departed may have left a will. You can
Yes.
do a will search at the master's office.
All right. All right, cool. So if you are joining the conversation, the number is +267 75 341 347. You can send us a video with questions you would like to ask relating to wills. If you don't have a will, how are you going to start one and how do you go about it? Or if you've got any other questions relating to the subject matter that we're discussing now on things that matter with Dr. Unitedal, please do send us your video questions. The number is +267 75341 and 347. Okay, question. I'm sorry to personalize this. How many wills have you written in your lifetime?
Oh. I don't know, probably more than 20. You mean like for other people as a lawyer or my own will?
Let's say for yourself, because I'm sure they change based on your
Oh,
interest,
I see.
on how
Okay,
the
that's
behavior of the other ones.
okay. So you mean my will?
Yes,
Do I have a will,
yes,
and how often? That's a very good question because I think a well-written will
yes.
should not need to be changed too many times.
All right.
It shouldn't be, I'll tell you what. I mean, first of all,
Yes,
let me say, why do you write a will in the first place? You write a will because you love the people who are going to be, you're leaving behind, and you don't want them to fight.
yes.
Or if they fight, you want them to have a very clear instructions as to what they are fighting for and how they should be fighting. Okay.
Um, there's something we discussed just before we went on air. Uh, Different countries, different laws.
That's all right.
So specifically in Botswana, what are the laws that govern wills here in Botswana?
Very good question.
Yeah.
And if you don't leave a will, you're placing in Botswana, if you're in
Yes.
Botswana, you're placing your loved ones in a very, very difficult position
Uh-huh.
because the question is going to be what law applies.
Yes.
Is it customary law or is it English common law?
Yes.
Okay, totally different rules. And some of the members of the family, the youngest boy will say, "Oh, it's customary law. It's customary law, and I must have the house."
Yeah.
Because you understand.
Yes.
And the the other daughter will say, "No, no, 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 no." The middle daughter said, That's not fair. It's English common law. My parents lived in Francistown. They lived, a modern life, and therefore, it's in terms of English common law. Therefore, each one of us gets everything equally.
Yes.
You understand? So, if you don't write a will in this country, you are creating problems for your heirs.
Uh-huh. And you spoke of the first child gets something different from the last child. If it's a girl, it's a different story. Just elaborate on that.
Okay, and I'm going to be talking about really probably south of debate to a large extent. I don't know too
Okay.
much about the laws of customary law rules. I know that's
Okay.
position in Botswana, in Boramotswa, in Botlokwe, jalo jalo.
Yeah.
That in terms of customary law, the youngest male gets the homestead.
Basically, they get the piece of
The,
the land.
no, the house.
The house.
The main
Okay.
house, I got,
Yes.
okay? Ko Mochudi, ko Ramotswa, ko Guy. I
Uh-huh.
got, they get the youngest male. The youngest female gets the plowing field. And then
Uh-huh.
in terms of customary law.
Okay.
And then the oldest male gets the moraga, the cattle post. Not all the cattle post.
Okay.
And then the cattle will be distributed amongst all the children.
Let's say there are no cattle at the cattle post. It's just a post.
Yeah, he gets a post because it used to be an important place.
Yes.
It is an important place in terms of the family, because that's where you will water your cattle if you have cattle. So again, it just shows you how sometimes lifestyles change,
Yes.
economies, types of economies change. The kind of economy that would have made that reasonable
Yes.
does not exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Until
All right, so we receiving people their videos or their questions. Please do send. The number is +267 75341 347. If you just joined, this is things that matter with Dr. Unit Dow. Discussing wills right now.
Okay.
What is your question?
Yeah. Okay. Having been in so many countries and looking to naturalize and become Botswana, I'm an only son, but my parents are both from the DRC. So, in case anything happens to them, legally, what happens? Do I apply the law of my naturalized nation, or do I have to go back to the DRC and apply the law that's over there? That's the first question. And then a close friend of mine is she's pretty much in the same predicament. She's an only daughter. Her dad passed away some years ago, and her mom passed away last year. And she's out in the U.S. All the mother's property is scattered, either here in Botswana, in South Africa, and in the DRC. And she's having trouble with her mother's side of the family in terms of the legitimacy of the will that the mom left, which was, I believe, it was done in the U.S. So I just wanted to find out what advice you might have for a case like that as well. Thank you.
okay.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you very much. Let me deal with the first question, the second question first. If she is inheriting the property in terms of a will, that shouldn't be a problem because there must be an executor of the estate who must follow the instructions of the will.
Uh-huh.
So it doesn't matter whether the extended family they have any ideas about what they think they're entitled to. Uh, the executor must follow the instructions, of the will. If they say the mother died without a will and she's the only child, once again she's the sole heir to that estate,
Uh-huh.
and therefore if anybody's bothering her, she should um, register the death with the
Yes.
master so that the issue can be resolved.
Uh-huh.
But basically she is the sole heir of that estate.
Okay. Doesn't that create some form of safety and security issue when things like that happen? Because is there like um, a protection service to such things? I mean, they do that with people who win lotto and
Yeah,
lottery and
yeah.
stuff like that.
People start become having more friends. I mean,
Yeah.
I often say, okay, that you are not an island, okay?
Uh,
You may have inherited all this property and it's only yours, okay?
yes.
If you want to continue to be happy within a family, I
Yes.
think it just makes sense also to engage your extended family in terms of, why do they want this? I mean, like, I find that often the fights are because people feel like we are part of the family before you had property and
Uh,
now you want to check us out. So there has to be a happy medium there. Actually, that actually loops to another question that I thought, another issue related. Remember
okay.
earlier on I said that you are at liberty to leave your property to anybody. It
Yes.
means that you can actually give all property to one child
All right.
and disinherit another. You know, um, you have the power to do that.
Mm.
Is it wise to do that? I don't think so. Because often parents say, "Oh, he wasn't taking care of me. He was
Mm.
never here. I'm not giving him anything."
Mm.
Remember, we are leaving loved ones.
Yes.
So the one child that you love,
Mm.
the one you give everything, is going to have a very rough life.
Yes.
So in deciding how to divide your property, try to be as fair as possible and
Yes.
try not to do the fight between you and your children to be
Mm.
inherited by the one you think you favor. That's
All right.
advice. Now the issue of I come from another country, I'm in Botswana, what
Mm.
law applies? That's a very good question. You can write in your will what law should apply to the distribution of your estate.
All right.
So you can say Botswana law shall apply, okay, because you are here, which means that it's, let's say maybe you have a house in Zambia.
Mm.
When you say Botswana law shall apply, you are saying Botswana law will apply in interpreting, you know, how that estate in Zambia should be distributed.
Yes.
It's called a conflict of law situation,
All right.
and it's resolved by you deciding what law will apply.
Mhm.
Okay, it may well be in Zambia or in DRC, whatever. The law says if it comes to fixed property, the law of the land will apply.
All right.
You understand? So yeah.
So talking about other countries, I think we just got a video question that's just come in. I think it's from Zimbabwe. Um,
We have a question
all right.
here,
This.
and it says, how much should I expect to pay a lawyer to prepare for them to prepare a power of attorney? And then question number 2 says, my mother passed away and she left me everything, but her family wants to take everything that she left me. What should I do?
How much you should expect to pay a lawyer? It really should not be any more than 2,500 unless you've got really, complicated estate.
Mm.
And in terms of, again, I advise every adult person to leave a will so that that particular child who you leave or children that you leave, is not inconvenienced by having to prove that they are the only children,
Yes.
prove that they're your children, prove that there are no other children.
Yes.
It just makes sense. And the other thing, one of the reasons why you should do that, we live very complicated lives, especially in African situations.
Yes.
I'll give you a very simple example. Do you have time? Can we
Yes.
just?
Yeah. That we can
Yeah.
do that before we go to a break. Yes.
Okay. Let me give you a very simple example. You're husband and wife.
Mm.
You've got two children. And once they grow up, they become more independent, they're 16, 18, you decide to take a cousin's child
Yes.
to bring them into the home. Okay. And you raise them.
Yeah.
Your relationship with the child, your cousin is that I'm good, I have it's a room, I've got, I'm fairly well off. I can take care of your child,
Mm.
through school. Okay. And then you pass away. The law may decide that you had actually adopted that child.
Mm.
Maybe that was not your intention.
Yes.
Your intention was to offer them maintenance during your lifetime.
Yes.
The court may say, or the master of the high court may say, you send the child to TDA,
Mm.
and therefore you wanted them to have private education.
Yes.
And therefore, before we give your children anything, we're going to calculate what is the maintenance of the child until they finish high school.
Mm.
And therefore, once we carve out that from the estate, only the remainder can be shared by your two children, because remember, you are obligated to pay maintenance
Yes.
to your children and those people that you demonstrated to the world that you want to actually maintain.
Mm.
So clearly, you indicate that you wanted to maintain this child. The fact that you're dead, your estate still has property,
Yes.
and therefore you may find that all your inheritance or substantial amount of your inheritance
Mm.
goes to supporting a child that you thought you were going to be holding or taking care of only temporarily.
Mm.
So it's important to understand that you may not have said, I adopt my cousin's child.
All right.
Mhm.
So that's quite interesting because now the first thing that came into mind when you were talking about that, which is going to lead into our next discussion, which is power of attorney. I'm young, I'm under 18 or under 21, depending on depending on the laws that apply in the country you are in. And my father has left everything to me, but uh, at the time of his death, they were going through difficult challenges between
Mhm.
him and my mother. And now everything has been left to me. Does the mother, or say my mother, have power over me, over the will that has been left? Or who controls the inheritance if I'm underage when my mother is still alive? How does that work? Is there a thing called the power of attorney? Or is that something you're going to break it down for us when we come back from
Okay.
the
We're
break?
going on break. Let's go on break.
Let's go on a break. Okay, we're going to come back with more. back to TDA Eternal Radio. On the show, it is Things That Matter with Dr. Unit Dow. And just before the break, we were talking if a child has been left everything by the father and the mother is still alive and they're having challenges before the untimely death, what happens to the inheritance? And legally, what are the processes in place to protect that inheritance that's been left to the child?
Wow, a very big question. I mean, first of all, if a child is under 18
Yes.
and they have any property, the guardian, the legal guardian, is going to be the one who is going to hold that property on that child's behalf until they gain majority. So if the legal guardian is your mother, and it is going to be your mother, your living parent, then that um, mother will be the one who's in charge of that inheritance. But let me complicate it for you, because the one you said is no complication at all.
Yeah.
You have um, two people
Yes.
married, divorced. Okay, the mother, is the guardian of the children, maybe giving custody and guardianship of the children, and she gets half of the property after divorce,
Yes.
her house, her money, whatever, and the children. Then she dies. Who comes and collects, the children? Of course, is the other parent.
Yes.
And all the property, really that belong
To the mother now.
because now he is now in charge. He's now the guardian
Yeah.
of the children.
So, okay. So the long gone father has now come back.
Yeah. Who's going to reverse from that yard in the deceased woman's car? It's him. Even though it was granted to her, because now he's not holding for himself, he's holding for the children. And unless she had left a will to say, the trustee, in the event that I die when my children are still young, I'm naming so and so as the trustee, okay,
All right.
of the estate on their behalf.
Okay. So
You can do that. In a will, you can say, in the event I die leaving children who are underage, the person, besides the executor who's supposed to manage the estate, who's going to hold the property in trust until my children or my child is of age. It's important to do that.
all right.
And then another
Yes, go
complicating,
ahead. Yeah.
another complicating question. These are really some of the reasons why you need to write a will. Let's say, for example, you were married and divorced. Okay, you marry again and got more children, and then you die. Okay, if there is no will, especially a joint will, I always advise couples to have a joint will.
Yes.
A joint will that says there will be no, a survivor of us will inherit the whole estate upon the first dying. And then upon the last dying, the property will be distributed equally on the children. You know why? Because if you don't have a joint will and Mr. X dies, leaving a child, with a former wife, okay?
Yes.
And got more children, that boy will come or that girl will come and say, can I have my father's estate? Maybe there's only one house.
Yes.
Because in terms of the law, so the house, you're married is a whole.
Yes.
The deceased owned half. The wife still owns the other half, the one who's alive.
Yes.
So the children, all children, including children from the former wives and the wife, now are entitled to half the estate. Maybe the only estate is a house. It means that it's potentially that house has to be sold, so that these children, they could be even major because they could be self-sufficient. They, in terms of the law, entitled to their child's share of their father's estate. You understand?
Yes.
So it's important to write a will to say when, especially if people say, "Oh, I have nothing. I've only one SIMO. I can't do a will."
Yes.
Sometimes it's because you have little that you must write a will.
I'm actually thinking now in my own personal case, let's say, there are things called, when you have shares in different entities, you have ownership of intellectual properties, you have royalties that are always due at a given time. So those things you can add to your will, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like we will take say I've got um, stake in Shell, let's
Mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
Can I hand it over down to someone that I actually appoint in the will?
Yeah, your will, all property, whether it's real,
Yes.
or movable,
Yes.
corporeal, incorporeal, meaning real fixed things or things like shares and
Mhm.
stock, you can leave to people. And I'm going to say once again that if you don't want to be changing your will every 5 years or every 2 years,
Mhm.
because maybe you sell your shares, you say, oh, so I didn't give, little Shima,
Mhm.
anything because I'd given them shares and then I sold them. Because remember, a will does not stop you from dealing with the property as its own.
Once you're still alive, yeah. So you can sell these things before you die, and then
Exactly.
one day they wake up, you're dead. They say, "Oh, there's a will."
And they said, a house in Ramos, or there's no house in Ramos.
Yeah,
But then you had said, maybe you said Shima will get the house in Ramos.
yeah.
Agnes will have the house in Francistown. So it means only Agnes gets anything
Mm.
because you didn't change your will on time. The best thing, I often, you are asking the question, how many wills? If you're talking about other people's wills,
Yeah.
more than 30, I'm sure, in my lifetime. The best will is when you say, um, okay, I leave my entire estate in equal undivided shares to the following people.
Mm.
Okay? It means everything. It means the chair, it means the spoon, it means the house, it means whatever. Equal undivided share. Okay?
Mm.
Provided that there might be distribution, okay?
Mm.
Where in terms of asset distribution or money, okay, as fairly as possible. So you are
Yes.
allowing them to say it's everything is yours.
Mm.
The executive can sit down and say, okay, we have 3 houses and 5 cars, whatever, we have whatever. So let's see how best. It's all
Yes.
yours. If you quarrel, I sell everything, I give you money.
Mm.
If you don't quarrel, maybe because you already live in Francistown. Maybe you should take the house, Francistown house, even though it's only 100,000 pula.
Mm.
You live in Gaborone, we'll give you the 200,000 pula, but you will get the money in the account so we
Mhm.
can balance. So you give flexibility to the executor without because you can disinherit a child by failing to say that. And maybe you're
Yeah.
in your 30s and you say, I leave my estate with my 3 children, Shima and Boiki. Then
Mhm.
you have Agnes. So it's better to say, my living children and any other children I may have.
All right. You talked about money in the bank. That's always an interesting one.
Mhm.
Who has access to the money in the bank?
It's no different from any other property.
Mm.
When you are deceased, you have to look at the what the will says. The executor's job is to list all the property, including money.
Mm.
Okay, it's got access. He can use the money in the bank to pay debts. Can
Okay.
use to you understand. So remember, basically, that the executor represents you now.
What is the difference between executor and power of attorney?
Okay, let's okay. The power of attorney that you introduced at the beginning of the show is
Mm.
about the power of attorney in the event of disability.
All right.
Often people think of themselves and only I'm alive or dead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but they forget that they may be in between.
Oh yeah. So
You
the
understand?
power of attorney is in between.
Yes. For example, let's say for example, I get hit by a car. God forbid.
Mm.
Please God, I didn't wish that
Yes.
on myself.
Touch wood. No,
Okay,
you're
touch
not
wood.
good.
Okay, it's
Yes.
not happening.
Until
But
we make that billion. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
and then I'm unable to act for myself.
Yes.
I'm not dead, but I cannot go to the bank to actually. I'm disabled. I
Mm.
cannot make decisions about myself.
Yes.
And maybe my husband wants to airlift me to Joanning or Francistown for medical attention.
Mm.
Or maybe they want to pay a debt that is due. They cannot do that without a power of attorney that I'm giving them to act on my behalf in the event that I'm disabled.
Yes.
And often you give each other this. So often, at least my advice to couples
Mm.
is a mutual power of attorney in the event of incapacity.
All right.
For example, if I'm incapacitated, and you have to prove it by, it'll be very clear.
Mm.
People say, oh, but I give them a power of attorney, maybe they go to the bank and sign up. No, the bank will have to show that you must come with a doctor's
Yes.
clear,
Knowledge. Yeah.
to say, look, I have to access this account, because the person is unable to deal with our own affairs.
Mm.
So it's a mutual power of attorney. You give it to each other. Because often we think, oh, okay, my account is my account, his
Yes.
account is my account, but it doesn't work that way because at the bank, if you didn't give each other signing powers,
Mm.
you don't have signing powers in that account. Doesn't matter how many, marriage certificates you come with,
Yeah.
stamped and stamped and stamped. Maybe you want to sell two cows from the farm, so you
Yeah.
can, take them to hospital. You can't if you don't have a power of attorney to sell that cow.
Yes.
So it's really, and maybe you want to even do their tax returns
Mm.
because you believe if they don't do them right now, there could be penalties. You
Mm.
can't unless you have a power of attorney to deal with these affairs. You understand? Maybe there's a
Okay.
check that's due
Mm.
that you need to go and collect. You can't. Maybe you're running a business together. The fact that, running a business together doesn't mean necessarily we can sign into each other's personal accounts. So it's really something I often, because I've seen it happen,
Mm.
of a client of mine who was like, my husband is at, this particular hospital. He needs to be airlifted to Johannesburg. He has money in the account. I cannot access it. So what do you do? You have to do an urgent, you know, um,
Power of attorney.
no, you
Or
can't. You can't
yeah.
give your power of attorney. He's as unable to act. So you may
So
have,
no one else can't do a power of attorney appointment with
but themselves.
by themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to go to the High Court to urgently move an urgent application to say it's in the best interest of so and so for the wife to be able to access their account. You understand?
Wow.
So because otherwise you have no right, absolutely no right. So you can't go to the bank. So this is my husband. This is my husband.
Yeah.
No.
So
Because
marriage certificates can't work. Business documents of incorporation can't work. The money can lie in the bank until there is that
yeah.
order from the
Unless if
court.
let's say
Yeah.
for example, we give a very good example. Let's say you own a bank, a company together, husband and
Yeah.
wife. But in terms of your instructions, both of you must sign. Both
Yes.
must sign. Okay?
Yes.
For anything to move. And he's lying in the hospital, you are lying in the hospital, and he's
Yeah.
there.
Now you
He,
can't
he, he can't
process.
move because, the fact you've given the bank clear instructions that
Hmm.
both of you must sign. So unless you have a power of attorney to sign on his behalf or her behalf, if
Yes.
he's
Either way.
unable to sign, then you are stuck.
Just out of interest,
Hmm.
how does one acquire a power of attorney, and what is the process on doing
The best thing would be a lawyer.
that? Okay.
It shouldn't cost you more than 1,500. Really, it's a one pager. Just really explaining what powers are given to him, what powers are given to her, and if you are running a business together, it should be clear filed with your so that it's easy the
Yes.
day you need it because it's this kind of thing that may never happen. So you may
Yes.
actually even forget it's there, but you must always have a set of documents that are really for urgent
Yes.
use.
Yes.
Clear the air by clear instructions.
One African question that is coming before we go. Is it true that the moment you start thinking of a will, it's almost taboo in the African sense that you are already projecting your death? Or is that the way to put it? Like there's always a fear of the
Hmm.
moment you
Hmm.
start thinking of a will, you're already thinking of your own death.
I mean, people are afraid to talk about death. They're
Yeah.
afraid to accept that we are going to die. I mean, like, we hope that's when you are 100,
Yeah.
but it may be tomorrow, it may be next week, it may be when you are 80 or 90. But there is one true fact: we are going to pass on.
Yes.
Okay, and you cannot influence when you're going to pass on by giving instructions to how your property is going to be distributed. If you love them,
Yes.
leave clear instructions.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm just thinking it's easier for doctors and lawyers to speak of these things without emotion, but for us to just start saying that, I know even people who are scared to have a funeral plan or a
Hmm.
life insurance kind of thing because they say do not do such things because you're already I don't
Hmm.
know, you are speaking death into existence,
Hmm.
but
But the ones who actually complicate things are young people
yeah.
with property, and they live will because I mean they've got siblings who fight. They've got, you
Yes.
understand. So at least you've got children, you've got a spouse. But yeah, I mean it's
It
just
happens.
if you want, if you love them, leave clear instructions.
What is the best age to start thinking of having a will?
When you start working.
When you start working.
Hmm.
So your first job should already be, hey, where's my will?
Hmm.
Thank you for joining us. This is Things That Matter with Dr. Unity Tao. Join us again next Monday.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.